Hi guys, welcome back to this channel. So today we're going to finally build the dashboard, right? So if you are following this series until now, I'm super glad to have you on board. If you're starting this video right now, there's a link in the description for the repo where you can find the list of all the videos and start from the lesson 0, right? This is lesson 7. Today we're going to build a dashboard. We're going to make sure that the dashboard display all the message, all the events, and we're going to make sure that you can filter the events by sport, and then you can also find the events that you have created so that you can edit the events and modify this stuff. So today will be the day, guys. So let's carry on. Cool. So the first thing first, we want to go for the dashboard. So the dashboard since the beginning is one of the first routes that we created, but so far we haven't done much with the dashboard. So if you open the dashboard, let's try to improve on that, right? So we have the user ID in the dashboard. If you don't add this line, this is to grab from the local storage the user ID. So you need to log in to be able to have an ID there. And basically because we're going to use that to fetch for all the events that you have created, right? So initially the thing that we want to do is fetch all the events. So the another thing that we're going to need here is to import our API from the API. So if you go to the services API, we will need the API here. We will need a few friends from React library. So we will need use effect and use state so far. And we are ready for a start. Right, so the first thing that we want to do is basically a method that will get the events from the dashboard and will save the events into like a local variable, right? So in order to achieve that, we need to create a few states inside here. So we want to get const, this will be events with s because it will be all the events, and then set events. We will use state, and initially this will be an empty array, right? So this is the default value so that we can do an iteration using map. The next thing that we want to do is basically look for let me think. Well, I think we can start just for that and add as we needed stuff. So React has this thing called use effect that basically is a hook that takes care of all the side effects of your application. So every time that your component render, it will trigger this use effect. So that's exactly this is if you're coming to React hooks right now and you don't know what that is, this is basically the same about all the component did mount, component did unmount, component did update, like all those states that React had. So basically one thing, right? So this is amazing because we can do functionalities inside and we can make sure that we do update things as we need it. So the first thing that we want to do is basically I like to kind of create like this functionality that we can trigger again and again. So I will define a function, right? I will define a function that will be called const get event, and basically what this function will do, will be equals to an async function, and this will return the data that we need. So we are missing this here. Okay, and async. Right. So now inside the async methods, we're going to create const request. This will be equals to await api.get dashboard, right? And this dashboard api.get.dashboard, and basically await. This will be equals to await api.get dashboard, and here in this functionality we're going to have a query, and this query will be passed here or not. Let me think about that, because we're going to use this function to get the filtered events, right? So basically, so we can say const URL will be equal to, do I have a query? If I have a query, I want the URL to be dashboard dash query, using the specific query that we got. So this needs to be this instead, and then we can say query. Otherwise, I just want dashboard, right? So will be basically the URL of the request. So if you pass a parameter, that will be, I will rename that to filter. So if you pass a filter to this get event, this case will be the sports, right? Otherwise, you bring to me all the dashboards. That's the only thing we will need. All the items from the dashboard. This will return a data object, right? So then we need to return here. Let me think. Oh, a thing that we might want to do here is make sure that we are sending the header with the user ID, because we will need to find out if you're logged in or not, to protect this in the future. So we're going to send the URL, and here we will have headers, and the headers will have the user ID, right? So because we need to know who you are. And then basically I think we can start with that. We can improve on that, right? And then will return the data that we need, and then what we can do here is set event to the data, to the request. This is actually not a request, this is a response. So then we can do response.data, right? Because data will be an object inside response that will have the stuff that we need. And then what we can do with this function now is do a use effect, and inside this use effect it takes a function like we did with use memo before, and then inside this functionality basically what we want to do is pass an empty array, and here we can say use effect get events. So I want to get the events, and this is a function call, and for now, this is just for now, I will do a console log. Let me think. We can console log the events here for now. So if we come back to the page, and now you look here, you can see so far that we have all the events. The first one is null, because it's when you first render the component, and because this is asynchronous, so this is we'll go there, speak to the backend, find events, and bring this back for us. So this is a good start for us so that we can actually build from here the rest of the app. So what we're going to do next is, actually that we know that this is working, we're going to create a few things inside. So let's start creating an ordered list that will hold all the events, and that we can style that a little bit, and that will help us to display all the information that we have, right? So the first thing first, we want inside this, we want an ordered list. This will be an ordered list. This is an ordered list. I will add a class name. This class name will be events list, and inside this we're going to do a map, right? So it will be event.map. This will be an event, and we will return from the event. Oh, there's a thing we're missing here. We need to wrap this, because this is JavaScript inside JSX. Remember that we discussed before? So all right, so then inside these brackets, we can return directly, because this is basically arrow function. So arrow function has an explicit return with the arrow. So what we can do, let me see if I'm missing brackets. I'm missing a bracket. Yeah, this sounds correct. Now what we want a list inside. This list will have a key property, and basically the key property will be the event.id, right? Because we have an ID per item. So React use a key property to find in the DOM where the property is, so that it changes just that property and doesn't need to render like the entire list again. So that makes the performance much quicker. And basically inside this, we want to add a few things. We will have a header. Will be a header from our list, and this header will have a style. Remember, in JSX you need to style pass an object, so we want to add a background image, and then inside this background image we will use the URL from the CSS, and we're going to use the event.thumbnail URL that we created before. If you're asking yourself, wow, where are you taking this from, right? I'm gonna show you right now. If you go in your backend and you open the source inside the modules, inside the event, remember that we create a thumbnail URL property that basically is the URL that we need to render that, right? So this is what we did. So now if you go here, we're starting to have something there. So basically we're having all the events. This is a list, so of course we don't have any CSS yet, and I can see a lot of 404s because I deleted a bunch of images, so we have files that doesn't have images anymore. So basically after we finish styling this, I'm gonna reset my MongoDB, and we're gonna create brand new events using like all the things that we did together. So let's continue here. So inside the header, I want a strong where we're going to have basically the event title, right? So we're going to have event.title here, and we will have the same thing, but I will change for spam, because I want in the same line. So this will be the event price, and we can have another one of that with event description. That should give us few things already. Okay, so we do have a few things already. Let me check if I'm having the images for some of those. Does this is open an image? We can copy the URL. If you right click here, open new tab, we can see that this one doesn't exist. Okay, so we have two things that we can do now for test really quick. First one, I will open another tab under the events, and I will create, under events, and I will create a new event to see if that shows up, right? Otherwise, we're gonna debug stuff together. So this will be a running. This will be a newer event test. Testing description, price will be a 33, and the date we're not displaying yet, but whatever. The event was created successfully. If I come back here and refresh, event was created successfully. So I know now that I can test the URL from that image, and hopefully that's going to work. So if you copy that URL and we go there, yeah, that does work, right? Good. So we can carry on now. So the next thing that we will need will be to add here the event date. So now if you look here, on Sunday, where's the date? I have a feeling that we're not sending the date. This will be a nice time for fixing that. So let's go back. First, let's have a look in the controllers. Let's start from like reverse engineering what we built. So I can see title, I can see file name, I can't see date here. So we have price description user. So this is something that we missed, and that's exactly why we're not creating that. Okay, so that's time for us to fix that, and the date will be here. So now that we have a date, we can delete this console log. This was old when I was debugging that we have an issue. And let's test now sending that event again. So we'll grab here anything. I will say anything. Price will be super expensive one. Date will be Sunday, and let's submit that. If you come back here, yay! Now we have a date there. However, we are sending a date object string, and we're not formatting that. So we have a few things that we can do, but basically I won't lose much time with that. I will directly to use a solution for that, right? So there is a library well known by formatting dates that is called Moments.js. So to install that, basically you do npm install moment. So I need to stop the front end, install npm moment, and then basically in the front end we can transform the date. So here we're going to import moment from moment from moment, and then what we can do, we can come here and say moment dot. If you pass the date to moment, you can do format, and then inside the format you can do the string that you want. If you look here, you have different ways of formatting this stuff. Basically the one I want is date, month and year, but I will reverse that, right? So I want day, month and year inside of moment. So let's see if that does work for us. Needs to start the server again. Oops, not install again. Let's run the dev again. It will take a few seconds. And now we have 31st of May of 2020. Cool, so I have the date. This is working well for what we needed. So what we can do, I think the date should be like kind of around the title or so. So I'll leave like closer, so that when we start to style everything, we can amend, do some modifications here. So now that we're handling the format in the date using moment, let's create a dashboard CSS file. So it will be a new file, dashboard.css. First thing first, let's go here and import this file before we forget, because like I'm super champion to do these things, I always forget, sorry. So now that we have the CSS, I think the first thing we can start really will be by the event list. So this is the first thing that we added there. So we want the width of that to be 100%. We want the list style to be none. We don't want those things, those marks. We want to display that. That would be probably like grid. We can try. Then we can do something like, I want one fraction by one fraction using grids, and the grid gap between the both fractions, I want it to be 20 pixels, and the margin bottom to be 30 pixels. Let's see how does that look like. Yeah, it's looking much better. Now the follow thing that we can do, let's create let's style every single item inside. So now we can say event list li. This will be the singularity list inside. This one I want to display it as a flex, because I want to be able to control and set the direction as a column, right? It's looking much better, right? And now that we have that, the next thing that we want to do is basically, let me format this, is basically do such a similar thing, but now for the header only. So I'm scoping piece by piece, and that's how we can organize our CSS code. So I want the size to be 100%, and I want the height to be 120 pixels, and I want the background size, this is for the image, right? So the background size I want to cover, and I want a border radius, border radius, that's to be 4 pixels. Yeah, kind of what we need. Maybe contain would be better. And then what we can say is a background image repeat. no repeat. Yay! So now you can see the picture, right, of the event. This can be larger. You can do as you please. Maybe you could have 240 pixels here, have a much larger images. I think that's about the size I want to keep. By the way, one of the things that you will realize is that we're not taking we're not controlling like the images. You could be transforming the images to have the same size, transforming it, and we're not doing that. So of course this image is much smaller than this one, so that's why we have this effect. But like I said again, this is not a CSS bootcamp. This is a bit like about the MERN stack, so we want to focus on the React and JavaScript, but I'm sure that you can find tutorials online to amend your code and do exactly as you please. So the next thing that I want to do, this is good enough for me, I want to have a look a little bit in the title, right? Let's make this title look a little bit better. So the title is the strong one that we're using. So what we can do, we can say the strong element. We want to style that with a margin top of 10 pixels, so 12 pixels I think would be better. Font size, I want that to be 24 pixels, and the color maybe 444. I like that color. Let me see. I think 3/4. Yeah, this is the color, right? So let me check if the font is being applied correctly. Okay, so let's carry on. The next thing that we want to do is, of course, I want to put the date. So I think if you go to moment and we can say this formattation here, I think format L will bring exactly what we need. So let's come back here. Instead of doing that, let's do L. See if that actually works for us. Yeah, much better. This is the event date. Well, I don't want to put the event date besides the title, because I think you can have a larger, much larger title that probably like this one, so it probably wouldn't work. But what we can do instead and say event date. This will be much more professional if we do something like that. Event date, and then basically here as well, event price and event description. So the event description will be a trickier one, because we're not limiting how long that could be. So what I want to basically do a quick test is look if I transform that to be 5 times the size. Oh, that's grateful. Is because it is inside the grid, so the grid is fixing it for us, and that's exactly what we need. So that's good. That's good enough. What we can do. I don't see the event. Oh, it's because I overwrite it. Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, so now there's a thing, right? Because now we have the event, exactly the event. So the event price, so that we can improve that a little bit, what we can do, we can parse that to float, and with to float we can do dot to fix it and say that we want 2 decimals. So this will bring us a much more readable price, right? And then of course we need inside this, we will need a button. This button we need to, let's bring this stuff that we need. So we'll need the button I want to import from the library, because we're using the same button all around. So I want to make sure that we keep using the same stuff to be consistent, alright? So below here, I will need just the button for now. Maybe we're gonna add a model soon, but let's have a look. Let's start as we need. And we need a button, and this will be subscribe the event. This button, yeah, it is not too bad really. Let me see another color for this button, right? If you go to buttons, you can see primary, secondary, success, info, warning, and injury. So I think this will be a primary button, so we can make the most from the responsiveness, and also it has its own effects. Coolio, and what I like this is all responsive, right? We can make so that for the mobile phone will look different. Let me have a look. So for the grid, what we can do is basically we can change the template for the columns to be just one column when the size is smaller. So what we can do, we can say media. This will be a media, and say that max width, and say that the max width will be 500 pixels. And inside this, what we can do, we can override the US event list and say that the grid template columns will be one fraction. And then basically that's going to happen. So now when you're under, so if you put the responsiveness here, and you can watch that size, everything that below this size until the 600 will be automatically with one fraction. And then what happens is when we have more space and you go for 600, we could actually probably do 768 maybe. That will be 768, and then we have a much larger event. I think that's much better. Yeah, and you could do the same for larger and have like after 1200 pixels, if you have that space, you could have like 3 or 4 fractions. But I think personally, I think this is a good enough size, right? And then we have a few things that we can do now before we start messing up. Let me see here. Oh, hold on. In logging page, we're not doing anything when we catch here, so you can do that and do that here as well. And this will be error. But the error, we want to get the error dot. No, what we want to do here and say error. The server returned an error. So this is the logging page, just because I did notice that we missed that. And the error message will be used in here. Is so many details that we miss a few things, sorry guys. And then of course, if you're setting the error message to the message, in this case it will use the dynamic one instead. So the next thing that we want to do is on top have something to filter the events, right? So we want to be able to filter the events, and the best way that we can do that is changing our components, right? So if you come back to the events, we have the events list in the dashboard, and then basically what we can do is before the map, right? What we can do, like React has this amazing thing that like you can add empty brackets like that, and this is what we call fragments. This is the shorthand to use fragments. So if you do react.fragment, that's the same thing. What fragment is, you think of fragment as a div that React introduces to the DOM, but actually when it's rendering, it doesn't introduce that. So that's why when you need a div to wrap up everything, because like React also doesn't allow you to have two elements in the same level. So if you have this div and say filter, and you remove that, and you look to the console, we're gonna have an error, right? And then they even inform you, did you want a JSX fragment? And now the newest version, they're showing like the fragments as the shorthand already. So you want the fragment, and because that's how React works, and you need to have one parent for all the siblings, right? And then we have a filter. What we can do, we can go back for the React strap and go for button drop down, maybe. Let me have a look. This is kind of sounds what we need. Do like that. Just me see other options. I think radio buttons looks great as well. I think this is maybe better for what we need. So in this case, what we can do, let's copy one of these, right? So it'll be a button group. And what we're going to do, we're going to come inside the div that we want. We will insert this button group. And basically, on my case, there will be running, there will be cycling, and there will be swimming. In your case, you can add as you need, right? This is that don't have any issues with that. So you need to import the button group there, and once you have the button groups there, what we want to do, and basically what we want to do, this will be function calls that we need to pass, right? So we need to define these functions so that we can have which ones are selected, like so. And this works so that you have the buttons and you have this nice effect here. This is just when it's selected. When click, you can fire different things, right? In this case, it gets selected. But basically what we want to do, we want to create another function that will be const filter handler, and this filter handler will be a function, and this filter handler will be a function that will use the get events, and based on the value of the filter, it will do different things, right? So right now what we want to do is actually add a fourth button here that will be a now event, all sports, and then you can filter by running, swimming, and in the way that this is going to work will be when you click, we're going to have a filter handler This is important that you get right. Basically what we can do here, we can simplify each thing that we're gonna call. So we're gonna say that will be the query, and what we're going to pass inside will be the query. So in this case, if the running will be selected, we want the running to be there and the running to be here, but this will be a string. In this case, all like short cases, and the reason being is that we can have just one way of measuring. And the reason being is like we can have one way to check and one way to pass the query to the get event one way of passing the query to the get events filter, right? So imagine in this case the cycling will be the number 3, so it will be a string cycling. This is basically will be a string cycling. This will be swimming. I will show you what is that's going to be quite nice actually to put together. And when you send this one, we want to send a null, and in this case, if null, we want to have the all selected. So when you refresh the page, it's going to be always by default selected. If you set the running or swimming, we changing as we have. And the nicest thing that now that we have that, what we want to change this filter handler to actually be the function. And then the first thing that we do is set the selected to the query, right? And then the second thing that we want to do is get the event. Look how amazing is that. Is get the event, and then inside the event we want to pass the query as a filter. So now if you click in running, you filter by running. If you by cycling, by swimming, or all sports. The only thing I would say, and I will strongly advise that you do, is normalize how you generate the data, because like right now when we create an event, so let's go to the events page. The sport, if you look by the sport is defined here, and basically we can define the sport whatever we want, and you don't want that. The reason being is because like you want to be sure that the sports will match the options that you are filtering by. So what you can do in this case, we can create an input that takes values, and you can choose by sport. So if you look back here in the React strap, this is how you define the sport as a string. And what we want options. So I think the drop down button in this case will be ideal, because like you can have 3 options, take one, and in your case you can customize the sports, you can add more supports, more sports, and that's basically how we're going to go for doing that. So in this case I will copy the entire thing, button drop down, and inside the sports I will paste everything, I will format everything, and then the label will be the first thing as it was before. And now we need to copy is open or is closed, the same way. So we need to copy these both functionalities, so so React can handle when to display and when not to display. So if you paste that here, we have now a state, and we have a function that basically toggles change if that opens or closed. So now if you're going in events, we need to import all that things, right? So we need to get drop down item. So that will be drop down item, drop down menu, I think, yeah, and drop down toggle, toggle props, I don't think so. This is, we won't need that. Well, here we want to say sport, then on my case will be running, it will be cycling, cycling. This one I will delete, and the other one will be swimming. The disabled I will remove, and now I think I missed that. Is open alert. Alert's not defined. Where is the alerts coming from? Alert is open is not defined. Set open. Drop down is open. Okay, so let's go for the events. So this is sports, I think. Yeah, sports, running, cycling, and swimming. That's perfect. Now this is working quite well. So what we will need to do, we probably will need to style this a little bit, right? And the value, this is the important part. So when you select something, so the value here needs to be the sports value, and let me have a look into the example again. So we have a drop down, we have a toggle, and the action. I see. So of course. So in this case, you want to show here the sport. Yeah. So you want to say here the sport will be the text, and then the initial sport, the default sport, we will change that to sport. And then when you click here, you need to have a different value, right? And then every time, like the set sport will be triggered for every single world. So in this case, on select, this will be triggered, and the set sport will set to running. And basically we're going to do that for all the three, and that will be cycling, and that will be swimming. And then of course we need to do a function call. This will be a function call, And now when you pick cycling, let's console log the value of sports. I think there's much better way for us to handle that. I think what we want to do, essentially, we have a submit handler and we want to create an event, a sports event handler. This will take a sport, and this is an arrow function. So const arrow function, oops, sports event handler, and what this function will do will be set sports to the sports. And then we can do that for set sports event handler, and I think this drop down, I don't need that. Caret, what does this caret do? Let's look on the console, right? So the value is Oasis Sports, and if I do that's the default value, it shouldn't be Oasis Sport. Say this is not being used. Oh, I see. I think that this is not on select, it's on click. Yay! 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 Happy with that. So now let's just style this a little bit. So essentially, we have the label, and what does that? This is coming from the input, so we no longer need the input. And the sport, let's see the options that we have here. It's like I'm not quite convinced by that color. I think that blue is not what I was actually looking for. Don't know what you guys think. So I think this is Mal button is the second, so you can pass sizes. I don't know what this caret means. I think I like this one. So this is just caret, doesn't have size, and doesn't have a color. So if you go now, no, where's the color here? Much better. I think honestly that we can put this sport as the last thing that you need to pick up. So we remove the label, and I will grab this entire thing. I'll chunk this out, and I'll put before the buttons, right? And then the thing is, what we need to remember, much better, right? Look, that's amazing. So the only thing I want to do is like when we're doing the validation, we have a function here that checks to sports, but the sports no longer this is sports now. That's the only thing you want to do, because like missing required information, or if you do that, so this is not valid, you need to do this thing, right? Pick up a sport. But what I don't like is this button is having an action here, right? I don't like that, because let's see what does that. So if you go to the sport where I wrote sport, this is a button and this is the caret. You can add a disable here, and then you can't click. I don't like the read the docs. Yeah, so now you can't click. That's better. That's better. Hey, cool. So now we have a functional page, and the dashboard is actually here. So we need to change this push to be here. Let me double check if we're doing that somewhere else. So inside the login, you also want to change that to push dash. Right. So guys, this video is getting super long again. I think we need to split that in a few things. Now we have swimming, cycling, and running, and let's make sure just that our events page is doing running, cycling, and swimming. And so this is 3 well-defined values that never is going to change, so I can filter by these exactly words. So in the dashboard, running, cycling, and swimming. Running, cycling, and swimming. So now if you do create an event, let's create a cycling event, right? So this needs to be swimming. That was wrong. Okay, so I want to test creating a cycling and a swimming event. So if you go dash events, we're going to have a cycling event. Will be, think that this is going to be a bicycle picture. Nice cycling event. The price will be just 20 quids. The event date will be on the 16th, and the sport will be cycling. Created. I want to go back to the dashboard. If I go to cycling, 20 quid, nice cycling event. Now if you go for our sports, we're missing the create event button here that we can quite quickly add. So let me think. We can copy this button here, and we can add it. Oh, this div is a mess. It's like, there we go, much better. This is actually needs to be, yeah. So now I want to have a button that will be events, and basically what this does, we need to take this component, we'll need to take history, and then basically what we can do, we can install that later on, but will be on click. What he wants to do on click is do this, and then a history dot push, and this will be events, right? So this is, I want the secondary color. Yeah, after else we're going to style this, but for now, the next thing, let me just make sure this is working well. Yeah, so the swimming now. So let's pick up a photo. Will be a swimming event. Will be swimming events. The price will be 99 because why not? The day will be 16 of, it will be the next month, and this sport will be swimming. So you can submit, and then you can come back to dashboard, swimming. There you have it. So guys, this is close this episode. I hope that you are having fun and enjoying our app. So in the next episode, we're going to finish the styling and cover the delete side of things in the dashboard. So please remember to like this video and subscribe if you didn't, and make sure that you can share this tutorial with your friends. That's helped quite a lot the work I do, and I'm very grateful. Thank you very much. See you in the next video.